Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by the nation's favourite dish, Josh Brown.
Hello!
Now, all the things that we thought were true leading up to a potential Resident Evil announcement are indeed officially true.
Finally, Scott.
It's taken quite a while. Resident Evil 3 has always been tied to the development of Resident Evil 8, and now the PlayStation Store was updated with just official artwork, official box art by the looks of it, for Resident Evil 3 Remake, so we can have a look at the redesigns of Jill Valentine, Carlos Oliveira, and the Nemesis himself. What do you think?
It's delectable, it's delicious, Scott. It's everything I've been wanting from Resident Evil 3 Remake, because we'll get to the two heroes in a second. But the biggest worry I had going into this sort of sequel/remake is how they were going to do Nemesis right, because I love the dude. I loved getting scared by this muscly, leathery, rocket launchery man as a child.
Yes, right.
But in hindsight, I'm not entirely convinced on that design. It is iconic, but would it scare me in the year of our Lord 2019, or presumably when this is coming out in 2020? I'm not too sure, and I think they have managed to update this from the brief glimpse that we've got of his sort of, upper torso in a very interesting way that stays true to the character and yet continues to make him a very scary biohazard.
Well, the thing is, when I was younger, I also played Resident Evil 3 first, and I always thought Nemesis was the scariest thing ever. And I love the gameplay detail in that game where if he corners you, you kind of need to make this split-second decision of where do you go, and the camera zooms in and whatever. I thought that was really intense. But in terms of the character design, he's very late 90s, early 2000s, Tooge, attitude or whatever. Big muscle-bound meathead who's just kind of coming at you with as much muscle as possible. Yeah. And I think that worked back at the time, and it works in terms of this big unstoppable force. But there's something that Resident Evil sort of played with their different boss designs of this thing's got an eye on its shoulder, or this thing splits in two, or whatever. And the new design kind of has this twisted, more macabre approach to his sort of face, where all the tendons and musculature in his face is stretched over the rest of him.
Because in the face-on image, he doesn't look all that different, but it's when you see just his kind of profile, like you said, the tendons in his face and the skin on him just looks grotesque in a really fascinating way. I didn't know how you could update that character model to continue to be sort of scary, and yet with just a few tweaks, and it's all it seems like it is, just a couple of tweaks, they've really nailed it.
They've got it looks like because obviously he's this weird sort of science experiment anyway, and he's going to result in some form that it then looks like they've tried to humanize, and I'm talking about in canon, they've tried to sort of put some skin over him or something, and it looks like a broken experiment. His teeth are massive and weird as well, they're really elongated.
They're very sort of cartoony, aren't they? They're very long, almost Venom-esque.
Yeah, there's that, and he's got loads of caution stickers all around him as well, which makes him look like he maybe was on display for a while at some sort of lab, and then he's broke out. I like these little details that sort of flesh out, the fact that he is an experiment, that he's something gone wrong. I think they can do that with more detailed graphics and character models.
Definitely, because Mr. X, God bless him, was a fashion icon. He was rocking that little hat, rocking the little trench coat. He looked at himself in the mirror every morning and thought, you got it. The Nemesis, on the other hand, you said, is covered in sort of this, grime, essentially. Yeah. But one that tells a story. It's not just there because it looks cool, arguably, which is what it was back in the olden days when the Attitude era of the Resident Evil franchise.
Well, that's kind of what it feels like. And I think that, like I said, they're obviously going to use the RE engine. Resident Evil 2 looked absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. I think they can do more twisted stuff just with close-ups of his face. Make it so that it would feel genuinely disturbing for that thing to get so close to you. And I want them to do more with that. What do you think of the overhaul of Jill and Carlos? Because Carlos has your hair now.
I did have had this pointed out to me because, he has his hair as bad as I do now, which I quite like, you know what I mean? It's big hair.
You, Carlos Oliveira, and Eddie from SSX Tricky.
Well, the issue with this is, Scott, because I haven't played Resident Evil 3 in a very long time, I can't remember what the original Carlos even looked like.
It was just short.
In my head, yes, in my head, in the films, the version of him in the films.
Barely.
Well, that's what he looks like to me.
Okay.
He's Oded Fair from The Mummy.
I guess they can kind of pull from different depictions of him that have been in different media. Maybe that's a weird question, because maybe a younger audience is more familiar with the movies than they are with the game, being that the game came out in 99 or whatever it was. Yeah. Which I guess is something worthwhile to do if you were going to sort of tap into that audience.
For me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem as radical as the overhaul to Leon and Claire in Resident Evil 2, because I remember that was a big talking point when that first came out. People were sort of thinking, what have they done to these characters that we love? Because they have more defined, looks, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's that. Yeah, totally. The older designs designs are more, I was going to say more iconic, but more capable of being iconic. There's something about the new designs that I think makes them more everyday, and like, this isn't a negative necessarily, but it makes them more everyday. It makes them look like they were plucked from just like a crowd kind of thing, which is probably what they're going for, because usually lots of the Resident Evil setups are this thing kicked off in the middle of a city or a lab or whatever, and someone has to go in and sort of sort it out. But then they kind of compound that with some characters being STARS members, and it all went all off the boil, but whatever. The setups initially was city gone to hell, person in the middle of it. And so with that, like, the same like character direction seems to be for Jill as well. She looks a lot more plainer, quote unquote, than the original Jill. What do you think?
I like that more because I do think, even though the characters of Resident Evil are larger than life, the way these two remakes so far, at least in terms of what we've seen from 3 so far, seem to be going down, is that it's sort of, it's a more gritty, more quote unquote realistic version of sort of these games. In my opinion, I feel like the RE engine lends itself well to realistic looking environments and photoreal graphics, whereas that now allows them to create like these characters that, they might not look like they're action heroes, but that to me benefits the horror, because you do feel like even though you're in this wacky plot about like, super agents and government labs and funky goings on, that you're still a vulnerable sort of real life person caught in the middle of it. I do think that these sort of more naturalistic designs do lend themselves to that, but I can still see why people would potentially be annoyed that's not the more classic version.
Maybe, and I want to clarify something I just said as well. I didn't mean that the characters were everyday in terms of their jobs. I just meant these situations, because you're in the middle of a city, you're in the middle of a big old mansion, you're trying to figure everything out. Not that it was like State of Decay style thing. But anyway, something in regards to Nemesis though, just something I was thinking of in terms of the skin being stretched over him and the idea that there's the real him underneath. Do you think they'll do a Mr. X style boss battle reveal type thing as the game goes on, where they can actually just show you what more of Nemesis looks like, or he'll mutate into something else?
I'd love that. I want yes.
He rips it off.
Just spitballing ideas, but I do want sort of Nemesis, perhaps not to mutate, because like you said, we've seen that so many times throughout the series. Like, the big bads in all of these games grow bigger and badder as the games go on.
Gets an eye on the shoulder.
It's obsessed with eyes. I love Resident Evil, but what's its fetish with putting eyes all over the human body? Anyway,
immediately terrifying, apparently.
What I want is, he can get bigger and badder as the game goes on, but I would like it if that's sort of inverse to how he looks. Like, say if his skin decays more, or it comes off, if his armor gets,
you can shoot it off, maybe?
Yeah, if you can shoot it off, something like that. If every single battle you have with him contributes to his look, if every single time you sort of bump into him, say you choose to fight him, if you manage to, stave him off, if he comes back later and part of his face is missing,
that would be brilliant.
Some skin is hanging off.
Yeah, and like, I love the idea that like over time, maybe his like general sort of look kind of changes. Another thing that is part of the overall leak, which is something that we could have assumed and have assumed in the past anyway, is that it's going to be revealed at the Game Awards. And that was apparently what they were waiting for. That's why the PlayStation Store was updated so close to the Game Awards itself, and why someone like Sony would have these assets in the first place to put on the PS Store. What do you think of that though? Because it yet again confirms that the VGAs are a bigger deal than E3.
That's it.
Or that most companies are waiting to put their big stuff at the Game Awards.
For the past few years, because I don't actually watch the Game Awards, sadly, because it's on its stupid o'clock in the UK. I would watch it if it was on at like 8 p.m. But the thing is, every single time I wake up, it's like Christmas morning in a way.
It is a bit,
I wake up to all the new announcements, and it's stuff that sometimes gets leaked, but it always has some big hitters. And genuinely, even though we have reported on it so many times this year, I didn't expect to see Resident Evil 3 this year, because obviously, 2 came out at the start, came out in January. But I knew that it was probably going to come out next year, but I didn't expect to see it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a negative necessarily, just because of how fast everything moves in any like entertainment medium now. But it is weird that RE2 was just in January, and they're immediately just going to supplant it with RE3.
Yeah.
You're going to kind of like potentially cut the sales off for RE2 and get a whole new wave of attention on the next game. It's interesting for people who are diehard Resident Evil fans, but like, yeah, it is weird. Like, why not space this stuff out a bit more?
I don't know, and that's what I kind of worry about, because as much as I've loved the direction Resident Evil has gone in over the past few years, I know what Capcom's like, especially when it comes to this franchise, and I would rather have them take their sweet time on it than sort of try to just capitalize on the success and push something out, which is exactly what happened with Resident Evil 3 back in the day, which is quite ironic. But I don't know, I'm not going to pass judgment on it yet, obviously, because they've hit the ground running with 2's remake, and it would use a lot of the sort of same assets, they've got a lot of the same systems built, and they were so, delicious. But I hope it's just not rushed. I hope it's not trying to capitalize on something to kind of act as a stopgap for Resident Evil 8. I hope it is as good and as well-rounded and as fully formed as Resident Evil 2 was.
I also wonder if they keep going and they just use this technology to then do RE4, or if this is the cutoff. Maybe they do Code Veronica, but like this is potentially the cutoff because those were the last tank control RE games, are the ones most in need, quote unquote, of upgrading. Whereas like 4, you can still go back. For me, I can still go back to 4 and absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think 4, and considering the amount of times they do HD re-releases for 4, not that they don't for the other games, but we can play 4 more or less every single console, and it still holds up to this day. I think you could do a sort of graphical overhaul of that, but it's not like you said. No game is in need of a remake, but when you look at
no game.
Well, I'm just saying, not necessarily.
Reskin Metal Gear Solid and put it out, and it's not Twin Snakes. Carry on.
Just saying it's not necessary. Okay. Whereas you look at something like Code Veronica, which sort of. That is more in need of a remake than 4.
Yeah,
because you can do more with it.
Yeah, and you've got those two. It's almost like 3 personalities for Resident Evil now. Like obviously the tank control stuff, the over-shoulder stuff, and then the first-person stuff with RE7. And yeah, like if they were going to go back and sort of like close the book on the tank control stuff by upgrading it to that middle chunk where the most popular ones came from, then for me it would. Yeah, I guess it would make sense to make this one of the last ones they do.
Scott Tailford, a last hypothetical. I'm losing my mind. We've done so much news today.
We've done 10 videos in a row.
Hypothetical. Question for you.
Yes.
What if they don't go back and continue remaking things? What if they do a new game in this style that's set between perhaps 3 and 4?
For me, that is what Resident Evil is. I think RE4 was the peak for a reason. I did like a little loop there, the peak for a reason. And I think, RE2 is great, the old school RE2, but for me, remaking it in this style, that just is the perfect blend of the intensity of the gunplay. There's things you can do with different like boss battles in general. This is Resident Evil for me. I like the tank controls, I like the specific camera placement, but I just absolutely love the way these new ones play. And RE7 was absolutely phenomenal, but it wasn't what RE2 remake was.
I'm going to just leave that to hang because I'm not sure where I fall down on it.
Interesting.
I love the tank controls, Scott.
You should. We should hand it over to you down in the comments. Which sort of Resident Evil personality do you want going forward? And what do you think about the first revealed look at Resident Evil 3 remake? For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.